My name is Nancy Panchison, and I am with Save Ojibway, trying to protect Ojibway Prairie for the last 8 years. Save Ojibway is an organic group of people that have come together to help protect Ojibway and the natural areas and living things that live here. I had heard rumors that Coco Paving, or a company at that time, I wasn't sure the company's name, had applied for an application for a big box development, and that it was likely going to be approved at a council meeting in October of 2007.
The Coco Group wanted to either change the zoning when they acquired the rear lots at Windsor Raceway, and they were either going to put up 500 houses or they were going to build a big box shopping area. The Environmental Advisory Committee at the time had given us a report that suggested residential uses, housing, would be more harmful to the environment, more harmful to the water table than a big box project. So we were presented with a check A box or B box, and it was either big box or multi-res or residential. So we went with the big box, which was told to us to be less damaging to the environment.
I attended the council meeting and tried to educate council on the negative impacts that this big box would have to the city's natural heritage. And unfortunately, it was approved unanimously.
The negative impacts are at multiple levels. Greatly increased traffic is going to be a real issue for animals, both insects and vertebrates. But those, of course, are also going to impact, in the long run, the plants. Those animals are pollinators, they're dispersers, so they will have an impact on the plants if their numbers are reduced. And there are more subtle impacts as well. All that exhaust in the immediate vicinity will have a little impact with extra deposition of nitrogen, and in grasslands in particular, that basically acts as a fertilizer. And while fertilizers are great in the garden, they're not good in natural communities because they will promote dominance of the strongest competitors.
When you talk about, throwing extra traffic onto the roads, these are species that will have no ability to protect themselves. They have no voice. This area also has top butterfly counts for North America. You have butterfly species that are really unique to this area. Birds, the amount of birds for this area are equivalent to some small countries. Entomology, insect-wise, it is recognized by researchers. Researchers come down here to research insects. One of the researchers, he said, of the 4 BioBlitz, this was the most rich in species that he's participated in. When I was trying to decide whether to appeal, everybody said that it was a losing battle and that there's no way that you can fight City Hall or a multi-million-dollar company. But I thought that it was a very wrong decision, and I could never be at peace knowing that development had moved forward and not done anything about it.
We have very unique, and I mean really unique, natural landscape here, natural ecosystem here that we're not protecting. Bearing in mind the number of vacant areas in the city, brownfield areas where they could easily build a development of this sort. And the idea of them moving into the only natural area that we have left in Windsor is just totally unacceptable to me.
Eventually, I left City Council and was elected as a provincial member of Parliament, and I've met with Nancy and her supporters, and they've come to convince me that I made the wrong decision back then. Even though we only had the 2 options, and the big box, I still believe, is better than residential development. But I believe now that property should somehow be saved and turned over for provincial parkland or a federal park, or just connected with all the other natural environment in that area.
Until this case, and that's actually a positive of this case, I never truly appreciated what we have in our community. We have so little natural heritage left. We need to do what we can to protect what we have. in order to sustain for the future. Ojibway is so many things, and that's probably the problem of some of this case, is that it's so many things that people don't appreciate everything. It's an area of natural and scientific interest. It's also a provincially significant wetland, an international wildlife refuge for the Detroit River. It's a Carolinian site. It also has 18 endangered and threatened species. All of these things are not just locally designated, but from a provincial status. It's huge as far as natural heritage. So it's a very unique ecosystem.
Nancy has been just a real warrior on this, a real champion of the environment, and I give her full credit. She has raised the consciousness of the people. Most people in Windsor now that have heard about this want this property to be saved.
One milestone that just happened recently was our ride to Queen's Park. We had a bus full of people there to see over 12,000 signatures, almost 13,000 signatures, and the stacks of the petitions, they were like this on the tables. You know, it's one thing to hear the number, but to actually see the number of papers that represents. And Percy Hatfield presenting those, that was awesome to have that support.
When we had arrived to Queen's Park, the idea was that a group of us were going to we were going to stage a demonstration out there to raise some attention to what's going on at Ojibway and try to get a little bit more attention. So a few of us decided, well, we came here for a protest of sorts. You know, we had signs and shakers and energy and attitude. So we decided, well, we're just going to sit out front and start drumming and see what happens.
The real value of the petition drive, it raised within our community, the greater Windsor-Essex County community, and beyond, the awareness of the issue. It raised people's consciousness about the environment, about this particular area, and convinced more than 8,000 people that it was an area worth saving.
Coco Paving said they did 19 years worth of studies and no endangered or threatened species. But when our experts went on, we found over 100 endangered and threatened species. That was amazing that day. And I actually thought the case was over, but it went to the Ontario Municipal Board. And the Ontario Municipal Board, unfortunately, is very pro-development. They don't want to get in the way of development, things that create jobs for communities.
It became clear in the first day or two of the OMB hearings that things were very structured and only tiny bits of information could be allowed, and anytime you went outside of that, it was usually overruled.
The OMB judge ruled that we were just raising apprehensions and that we should have done a more technical study. The problem with that is those technical studies would cost at least $25,000. So the problem I have with that is, why should the public have to spend 25 grand on these technical studies where the developer is supposed to prove no negative impact?
They were only interested in, did the city and the land developer do what they were supposed to do? Did they follow the correct steps and procedure to get to where they're at today? And we weren't arguing that. We were arguing that the steps that they were taking wasn't including all the information that we needed to make a just and knowledgeable decision about how to use that land.
Coco Paving had applied to the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry for a permit under the Endangered Species Act. This is commonly referred to as the ESA permit. This permit is for the overall benefit of various endangered or threatened species.
The decision of the Ministry of Natural Resources to grant the permit basically meant we were fighting a rearguard action.
There's many negative impacts to the big box that weren't considered in the Coco Paving's environmental report. The only negative impact that they considered to the park was noise to the species. It did not consider the Ojibway as a provincially significant wetland. because it wasn't designated as such until 2009. So many negative impacts weren't considered, and some of those would be, and probably top concern, landscape fragmentation. I talked about the 18 endangered and threatened species. If you look at maps that have mapped out species, endangered and threatened, or species at risk in this area, many of them are found along Matchett Road. And Cocoa Paving said that the road acts as a barrier. And in fact, I did a road mortality survey, and the highest road mortality occurred right in the center of Cocoa Paving's development. They're still crossing the road. I have been sued for $170,000 by Cocoa Paving for, they say, causing delay in the case, because what I'm saying isn't true.
This was not a facetious, let's just try and delay it. This was a serious concern raised by people really, really concerned about our environment and about the future of this planet, trying to convince a developer not to go ahead with this, that the land was more valuable in its natural state than as a plaza for big box shopping.
People shouldn't be liable for basically trying to be engaged and involved citizens. And I think she's suffering very unfairly for things that should have never come up. I mean, this should have never reached this point.
That lawsuit is like a noose around my neck. You know, it's $170,000. You know, that's a ton of money.
And now we're at this stage where the Ontario Municipal Board has ruled against her and in favor of the Cocoa Group and their big box shopping plaza.
I think that it was really important, despite the decision being negative, to actually present all the information at the hearing and get it out there and make sure that it was part of the record. And it was also important to bring all of these issues to the public's mind so that they really know what's going on and the impacts that are happening.
Although Ms. Panchasan, in essence, lost the hearing, I don't think she really lost. I think that she was instrumental in gaining additional lands that will be set aside as a buffer that will be added to the Ojibway Nature Center. Originally, the buffer lands were going to be only 50 feet wide, and basically through Nancy's efforts, this has been expanded to 4.5 hectares, or approximately 10 acres. I think that's a huge victory for her and for her cause. I think she should be very proud of that accomplishment.
The Ojibway OMB decision was pretty heartbreaking, but the fight is not over, and it's in the people's hands. It's definitely the people that will bring change for Ojibway and maybe even change for our province to bring our elected officials accountable. Ojibway is a wetland. It's a provincially significant wetland. And step up, protect it.